center at the cross and then allow these images of famous celebrities to flash by, if you're like anybody else, I guess, as the images flash by, it's really freaky what you see, right? I mean, distortions all over the place of these famous faces. So Susanna, look, do we understand what's happening here inside of our brains?
It's mainly a matter of contrast. So again, this time in the face recognition domain, this highlights that for the brain there are no absolute terms, and so the way the solution works is that you have all of these faces of these generally beautiful people, A-list actors, and that individually are gonna be looking just fine, better than fine, but because of the way that they are lined up, our brains are forced to make this online comparison, and they're very specifically selected so that you will have somebody, say, with a normal average size nose right after somebody who has a small nose, and our brain is going to be exaggerating the size of the average nose in comparison, and so on and so forth. So the features of each of these individual people, because the brain is constantly comparing with what came before, they become caricatures of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, do you find this as mind-blowing as I do, or maybe is this like a hackneyed video in the field, and you're like, oh, not that, not the famous face video again, or does this?
No, this is a wonderful illusion. It's very powerful.
So let's look at another visual illusion. So, Emily, maybe you can take us through what we're seeing here. You know, it starts as a bunch of splotches and then resolves into something more familiar. So, what happens as we look at this image?
Well, sure. If this is the first time that you're seeing this snowstorm, you might be wondering, like, well, what is this? And your brain might be quickly trying to couple some of the black bits together, or you might be trying to effortfully recombine them because you just don't even know what this is. If you have seen it before, you know exactly what it is that you're looking at. For me, I have read through all of the textbooks that showcase this, so I cannot unsee what's in here, which is a dog. It's an image of a dog, of a Dalmatian, in fact. Now, I wonder if, having said that, if people who hadn't seen it before can now pick out the dog that's in there. And once you have, it's so hard to just see this as a random collection of dots, as the snowstorm that we first opened this up as. Again, because we have that past experience that resolved the configuration of dots in a particular way, perhaps sort of imbued some connections between these dots that aren't actually there, but is essential for us to put together the visual experience of where the dog's face is, where the body is, where the legs are.
So, Rodrigo, do we have a sense of what's happening at a neurological level when the brain is able to find coherence and see the Dalmatian in this image versus the state that it started in, where it's just a bunch of splotches on the page?
Well, I mean, you clearly, at some point, you recognize that there's a Dalmatian. I mean, when I see this image, I know this image, I immediately see a dog. I mean, I don't see the snow anymore, I just see a Dalmatian straight. But it's because I have seen it before. So I think the moment we see that and we recognize that, we are creating a representation that is slightly different to the first initial representation. So we add more information to that, and we somehow encode in our brain this information that, I mean, here is not just a random set of snowflakes and so on, it is the image of a dog. And we cannot undo it. I mean, it's impossible for me not to see a dog anymore.
You know what's interesting, though?
See if I can get in on it. Yeah, it's kind of small, but I can probably get in on it. This is what they're talking about. I think it might be a painting. Now let's find out. Now, if this was a photograph, I'd be much happier, but it's not, is it? Let's see. No, it's a painting. Okay, so it's a painting of a scene, and you can see the dog is there, but all around, I should be able to extract the EMNC, and I can. I can go in and we can digitally collect all the same things that I'm digitally collecting here. We can pick out. We can pick out face within face within face. There's going to be no body images anywhere. The only body image we're going to make out is put in here by a human, which is this dog right here. See his head and his legs, right? And the body image that's right here. And it's not really, it's only because we know this as the dog and someone has already pointed it out. Otherwise, even that, I don't have any tracing. There's no outline over here. We only are assuming in our mind that, of course, this would blend in with the snow, with the background, and all that kind of stuff. But all these faces that we're going to find in here, eye, nose, mouth down here on one, and then image within image, so the next mouth is down here for those same eyes, right? And we can keep turning this, and they do a better job of hiding the true creator, because again, this is human influenced. This is a painting by a human, and as I move it around, I can certainly come in here and keep doing eye, nose, mouth down here, little smiley face. I can also point out to you the triangular shapes everywhere. But I've shown before in other videos that you can do this anywhere. You can just take a paintbrush, a random paintbrush, and just dab it in whatever color you want. Make a bunch of splotches all over a white canvas or a black canvas, or change your colors. And you're going to still see the feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. As a matter of fact, even better than what we're going to see here, because they're hiding a lot of it with these areas, with whites and solid blacks, and there's no collage that's happening. And it's definitely not happening naturally. It's happening with a human with a brush in their hand that's going at this with intent to make this here. So it's being done with intent by a human. So let's look down. I'm looking down here in between my pause, play shit, and everything to make sure it's definitely a painting or a penciling or whatever. But yeah. So even when humans try to hide the true creator's work, like in this case here, you can always see it. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because in the last one, yeah, I could. I could have some fun with it, but I'm not going to get too much into it. Hold on a minute. It's like I was saying before about the reflections, mirrors, and shiny objects buffing the stones and buffing the rocks to the point, because that was a lot of work to go through to be buffing those huge stones. And the only reason I can see they do that was to be trying to hide the true creator's imagery, work, and the builders. If you're trying to hide them from everybody, then that's why you would do that. Unless there's other reasons, I don't know, but that's all I can think of. But it doesn't necessarily work, because when you make reflections, if it's very reflective, like a mirror, then you're collecting the imagery through the reflection that's in the mirror, and everything in the mirror is true creator's work, so therefore you're still going to see it. Let's say there's trees in the background, you hold the mirror up and see the trees. So though the mirror, you may think, is not holding it because it's reflecting it, but you can certainly put your eyes at the mirror and digitally collect the same exact images that you could if you walked right up to the trees. So you can't really hide it in that sense.
In there. And once you have, it's so hard to just see this as a random collection of dots, as the snowstorm that we first opened this up as. Again, because we have that past experience that resolved the configuration of dots in a particular way, perhaps sort of imbued some connections between these dots that aren't actually there, but is essential for us to put together the visual experience of where the dog's face is, where the body is, where the legs are.
So, Rodrigo, do we have a sense of what's happening at a neurological level when the brain is able to find coherence and see the Dalmatian in this image versus the state that it started in where it's just a bunch of splotches on the page?
Well, I mean, you clearly, at some point, you recognize that there's a Dalmatian. I mean, when I see this image, I know this image, I immediately see a dog. I mean, I don't see the snow anymore, I just see a Dalmatian straight. But it's
Yeah.
because I have seen it before. So I think the moment we see that and we recognize that, we are creating a representation that is slightly different to the first initial representation. So we add more information to that, and we somehow encode in our brain this information that, I mean, here is not just a random set of snowflakes and so on, it is the image of a dog. And we cannot undo it. I mean, it's impossible for me not to see a dog anymore.
You know what's interesting though, and again, I don't know if this is peculiar to me or whether it's maybe intrinsic to these kinds of images. I had never seen this image before until quite recently. And at first, I went through exactly the process that Emily and Rodrigo are describing. I didn't see anything at all. And then all of a sudden, the Dalmatian popped out at me. And then I couldn't unsee it, as you're saying, except when I changed the scale of the image. I can't help but fiddle. I'm a fiddler. So I made the image much different size than when I initially encountered it. I made it much smaller. And then I lost the Dalmatian for about 10 or 15 seconds. I stared, and then the Dalmatian came back. So is there an element of recapitulating the process that you first saw the image? And if you radically change the scale or maybe the lighting or things of that sort, you can unsee the thing that and otherwise would be something that you couldn't erase that image?
I think what you're doing is when you see the image, I see some features. It's not that I see a dog straight, I see some features of the dog that gives me the image of the dog. So I see the face. I know more or less what the face is because I have seen this image before. And then I can recognize immediately the posture of the dog and I can get through the whole body. Now, if you start feeling with the image, as you say, and you lost the scale and you lost where the head must be and so on, then I can understand that it will take you some time to figure out, okay, what is the exact position of the dog now? But once you recognize this feature, I mean, it's kind of like the whole thing appears again.
So Susanna, is this a nature or nurture in your opinion, this particular illusion?
Well, it's both. Nature and nurture come together in this particular image. Is that our brain is always trying to solve ambiguity, something that we don't realize because we have been used to seeing our whole lives. Those of us who are sighted, that is that the visual input is just very ambiguous. Even at the level of our retinas, we have a constant confound between the size of an object and the distance of that object from us. And we are not used to recognize that. But the fact is that it's very uncomfortable. And so our brains are not settled in a way until we're able to manage the ambiguity. And so I think in this particular image with the dog, once that our brain realizes, oh, it's a dog, now we don't need to keep going with the snowstorm and analyzing it and trying to figure out what's there. We have a dog, and that's our shortcut to this image. So that's a very useful skill to be able to develop and to apply in the future if I'm ever faced with this image, with this situation again, which here is a Dalmatian dog, but it could be a real life predator. I'll be able to recognize it and I'll have my shortcut and I can act quickly without spending a lot of resources that may be very costly.
And then presumably you're able to cede that capacity to subsequent generations because you were able to escape that predator because of that shortcut that your brain used to recognize this danger in the environment. So Rodrigo, that speaks to both the evolutionary utility of the computational shortcuts that the brain takes to gain some story about what's happening in the objective reality, but also speaks to memory as a vital part of what shapes how we see the external world. And I know that's an area that you have spent a lot of time researching. So maybe just first as an overview, what is the role of memory in everything that we're talking about here tonight?
Well, I mean, memory and perception, they are quite interlinked, no? Because memory impacts perception, and perception, of course, impacts memory. So there are two different functions of the brain, but they are interacting with each other. what I really like to see is there's a general principle that I think applies both to perception and to memory. And you're talking about evolutionary advantages and so on. Let me give you a very simple example. And the example is when we learn how to read. And when you get a child that starts reading, I mean, they will go letter by letter. And then at some point, I mean, they will construct the words or the syllables, and at some point they will go syllable by syllable and then word by word. And when we read
I
a
like
book, we don't
these.
even go word by word. We just jump. I mean, we just jump. I mean, we leave all the articles aside. We just
This
jump
baby
from words
face
to
back
words.
here,
I mean, and we
Sam.
go much faster because we don't want to spend the time in reading all the things that we can fill in. We know what the article it is because we know we have read many books. We don't even need to process this information. It's a waste of time, right? And I think that's more or less how it works with vision and how it works with memory. So the way our memory works is basically you don't want
This
to
one's
remember
pretty cool
everything that
too. The one I
happens to
first
us
went in
because
on.
otherwise it will be too much
I,
information.
I,
And what you want to do is you
nose,
want
big
to
weird
extract
nose,
the
mouth
meaning
open,
from what
Mick
is
Jagger
happening.
look, which
Remember
is
a
just
few
another
events,
image
salient
within
events,
it, which is
and then you
I'm not even
construct
gonna
a
point
story in
out
your
because I don't
head.
want
You
to
give an
throw
interpretation.
you off. But
Let me give you another example. If you watch a movie, you will not be able to recapitulate the whole movie from beginning to end. But you don't want to do that. You want to remember the argument of the movie. And maybe telling the argument of a movie is just a couple of
a lot
minutes.
of good ones.
But you don't want to remember 1.5 hours. You want to understand the movie. And understanding the movie is exactly this process of getting very little pieces of information and then trying to construct a story about it.
Yeah, no, there's a powerful short story I read some time ago about an individual who cannot forget anything. And the trauma that creates in a life if you had 100% accurate memory of everything that you ever encountered.
That's a story from a writer called Jorge Luis Borges, an Argentinian writer. He told a story called Funes de Memorios, and it's actually about a guy that cannot forget. And first you think, well, that's great because, I mean, I will do great at university, at school. I mean, if I can remember everything, my exam, I will get top
So
marks and
there's
so
his
on.
and
But
there's
then
his
Borges
mouth.
realizes, well,
It's
actually,
right
if
here.
you don't forget
So that's
anything,
the
then
image
you start
that
to
makes
struggle
up
because you
his
cannot really
mouth.
think
Is that
properly.
one?
Yeah, I can imagine you can't see the forest from the trees. I mean, it's like
mouth
you're just
again.
overwhelmed by the detail.
See,
So
there's
Andrea, I want to
him
drill down on
again.
one particular relevant discovery
This is a
of
good one
yours
too.
to the conversation that we're having
Nose,
right here.
clear as
I
day,
don't know if
mouth
you
right
like the
here.
name or don't, but
He's
it's
got
usually
his
called
full
the Jennifer
hairdo.
Aniston neuron, where
It's a real good
you
one.
had this amazing discovery of neurons responding to very specific stimuli in the external world. Can you
Because
just
he's
take
already
us
cropped in the
through
camera, so
that,
it
that
makes it
episode
better.
a little bit and
He
give us some
cropped them
sense of
from the
what you
opposite
extracted from it?
direction.
The experiments are, it's a very simple story. There are some patients that they're epileptic patients, and for clinical reasons they get implanted electrodes inside the
Okay.
head. And the reason for doing that is to try to cure them from epilepsy, because then the doctor will try to localize where the epileptic seizures come from and then evaluate the potential surgical intervention that may cure the patient and so on. Now, there are many technical details that I will skip, but
good
the idea is
one.
that these patients, they
Good
stay in the
ape
hospital
face
for
here.
about 1 week or so, and then they have the electrodes inside the head, the
Eye,
electrodes implanted.
snout,
And this gives us the
mouth
amazing
open down here.
opportunity to try to understand what the neurons were recording from, what are they doing. And then when I started to get involved in these
And there's a
experiments,
good
at the
human
time I was at
face right next
UCLA
to
in
him.
California, I started showing pictures. I would put the laptop in front of the patient,
Nose,
and I would
mouth,
show different pictures, and I would see
hairdo.
what the neurons I'm recording from are
And
doing.
then he's within
And
another
the Jennifer
image.
Aniston neuron is nothing more, nothing less than finding a neuron that will respond to Jennifer Aniston, but not just to one picture of Jennifer Aniston, to any picture of Jennifer Aniston. And I did a search in Google Images very quickly. I tried to get pictures as different as possible because I thought, well, is it really this picture that is triggering the firing of the neuron, or is it her? And then I just came up with 7 completely different pictures of her, different poses, different profile, different haircuts, and so on. And the neuron responded to all of them, and to nothing else, to nothing of all the other pictures I showed. So this was telling me, okay, the neuron is firing to her, is firing to a concept, in this case the concept of Jennifer Aniston. So that was the first, and that was the main discovery. But then as I found the Jennifer Aniston neuron, there were many others. I mean, in another patient, I found one firing to any picture of Halle Berry. And also if I wrote the name, whenever I wrote the name Halle Berry, the neuron fired, and not if I wrote other names. So The interesting point is that these neurons are in an area that is known to be critical for memory. It's called the hippocampus. And it makes sense that we have neurons firing to concepts, to abstractions in this area that is a memory area, because that's the way we remember. We tend to forget details and we tend to remember more concepts and associations between concepts. Or that's the primary way of remembering. That's the skeleton of our memories, I will argue.
And so most of us who are not neuroscientists but sort of think about these ideas, I've always assumed that a complex concept like Jennifer Aniston, right? That's a complex high-level concept would require all sorts of neurons to be interacting in some complex network that would be required to bring up that higher level notion of a human being of a particular sort living in this particular time period and so forth. But you're saying that somehow a single neuron can capture that concept. Is that the main import?
If it is a single neuron, I mean, I should be playing roulette in Las Vegas because I will be the luckiest scientist in history. I mean, if there's only one neuron firing to Jennifer Aniston,
That's true.
I mean, I should be very, very lucky. So a very simple argument shows you that, well, if I found one neuron, there have to be more. I mean, I just found one out of, I don't know how many, maybe thousands in this area and so on. But then the second point is that these neurons are not alone in the brain. So the hippocampus, the area where we found these neurons, is very high up in the level of processing visual information. So if you imagine that you start from the eye, the retina, you go to the lateral genicular nucleus, then you go to B1 in the back of your head. If you start drawing all the areas that are involved in the processing of visual information, I mean, there are a huge number of steps, and at the very top, you end up at the hippocampus. So why do we have neurons in the hippocampus firing in this remarkable way, in such a complex way? Well, it's because this is relying on many areas before that has been processing the information. So I will say the Jennifer Aniston neuron is not there on its own. It's actually getting the information from previous areas that process different aspects of the picture or of Jennifer Aniston herself.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, please.
So I think for me, I had this experience of learning how do we make sense of other people's faces that resonated with a very basic principle, which is when we are looking at other human beings, we're not looking at their nose and their mouth and their eyes and the specific hair, looking at those local features. We look at the gestalt. So there is a nose shape, that's Jennifer Aniston's nose. There's a haircut, that's her iconic style. But when we're looking at Jennifer Aniston, we look at the whole picture and not the basic features that make her up. And that's true for all people that we have a lot of experience seeing. A good friend of mine once had played a game with me. She asked my husband, who was not my husband at the time, to take pictures of his hands, of his nose, of his foot, of a part of his hair, and she asked a bunch of our friends to do that. And then she put an array on the screen and said, which one is your future husband's nose? Which one is your future husband's hair? Which one is your future husband's foot? And I failed. Even though I was about to marry this man, and I had seen his face and all of him for years and years and years, I couldn't pick out the local features because that's not how we see people, especially people that we have a lot of experience looking at. We look at the gestalt. We see the gestalt, not their nose separated from their eyes, separated from their hair. Again, it goes back to the idea that our past experience really informs how we perceive. And when it comes to seeing faces, we don't see the local features. We see them all together in configuration.
And was your husband convinced by your Gestalt explanation, or did he?
And what she's talking about there about the Gestalt, it's amazing because if you go look at the system and see it for what it is, you'll see that the false creator built everything based on division. So the true creator's work, as we are noticing, right, as we're looking around, eye, nose, mouth, ear of this guy. So if we notice that they're all faces, feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast faces, we don't see any body imagery. Body imagery in the moon is the only place that I got it on a regular basis that I can count on. And again, that brings us into the division. That brings us into the false creator/creator's work, the moon. So did the false creator/creator maybe perhaps force some of his ideas into the true creator's build is what I have to ask. Because even in the moon, those body images all are made up of other faces. So it takes the faces in order to make the bodies. And I'll explain real quick before this video ends how that works. So as you go, I did try to explain this the other day in a video, but I wasn't doing a video at the time. Nice big images up here too. This one, eye, nose, mouth down here of him. So anyways, eyes, nose, and mouths, triangular shapes is what I always tell you to look for to start out and try to find the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and then you can make out the images. And that's the best way I know to do it. And then you can confirm it over and over again from there. Um, in other words, you change your angles, you find other images, and then all of a sudden you come back to this one that you started with, and you're like, okay, confirming it over and over again that you're not just seeing what you want to see, you're seeing what's actually there, that kind of thing. And what you'll notice is that the different portions of all bodies, the animals and the humans, feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast, their bodies are made up of the images of the faces. So it went something along the lines of your nipples, your belly button, in your belly area, especially depending on male and female body features, whether they were hippie or not, whether they're hips or not. I'm talking about putting the image of a face onto the torso, onto the middle part of the body, his arms and legs, that kind of thing. And what I found was pretty incredible on that, to be able to point that out now and know that we can see it and understand it. And then the next one would go nipples, belly area, and vagina or penis, and that kind of thing. And same thing from the back, the ass cheeks to two ass cheeks, because there's two of them, that kind of thing, and work your way down. And when you're looking at the body images that you can find, because I have found some down here, I have seen some body images, like the one of the ape that was just in the last series. He was sitting down with his legs folded, and he had the full arms, his legs, his belly, everything all down there. Even his groin area and stuff was like that was in the image. It was a pretty good image. It was in the cloud level when I was collecting EMNC, and it's in the series. I don't think it got deleted yet. But you can see that, and then you start to understand when you look at the faces that are in the torso area of the ape, in the ape's body, and then you start to see it, and then you're like, okay, okay, I get it. So that's how the false creator / creators build is different from the true creators build, because number one, it's a biosystem. Number two, he kept dividing, where in the true creator system there is no math at all, no math. Everything is one. And so there was different things about the false creator / creators build that made it separate and different, and you can see the differences between the two builds. And that's one of the ways. That's one of the ways, by looking at how the faces were divided in order to make up what we now would call bodies. And then the vagina, the knees, the kneecaps, and then the feet together is the way that it usually goes. I don't remember on that particular ape, his legs were folded, and I don't think I got much of his feet, maybe only 1 foot, but all of his legs were there and all that. So in other words, I don't remember what the face was. And of course, that's what faces are going to be in every single direction as well, so you can flip your camera around. It just helps to confirm what it is I'm trying to explain to you guys. And of course, I'm always looking for anything that falls outside the feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. I've been doing it ever since we've been talking. Anytime I see something that looks elongated with an eye that looks like it could pass for a cattle's eye, then I'm looking into it to see if there's a large area here, and I'll go in and look at it and crop it and stuff. And then it always turns out to go canine or something like that. Um, there is a really nice one back here too, human face, eye, nose, mouth down here. And then if I bring him out to here, he goes with this eye, with that eye, see him? I'll put my stick on the other side of him. It's pretty good. There's millions of them in there. Anyway, find my sound again. Yeah, a lot of good imagery. Yep. Alright, why didn't it not play?
Did he?
Well, he married me nonetheless,
Good,
so I guess
good.
it worked.
Great. So it's a wonderful interplay between the physical stimulus and all the other architecture from memories and experience that we hold inside of our heads, and it's out of the collision, if you will, between the higher level memories and experiences and the lower level data that the eye takes in, that this ultimate image of the world is built inside of our heads. You know, there's a powerful example of this, Emily, that I think everyone in the world is familiar with. It was this example of the blue dress, the white dress that just sort of took over the internet some years ago. Can you just tell what happened with this? Why do you think people got so worked up about this particular example?
I mean, this is another example just of how we are so convinced that what we are seeing is the right way to see it. We have a sort of naive realism that what is coming through our eyes and the experiences that we have are true and accurate. That's why visual illusions are so fun because they defy what we believe to be true. So we naively believe that what we are seeing is accurate. It's the way that things really are. So when I see this as a white and gold dress, I cannot understand how someone could see it as blue and black or whatever it is that they experience. And because we are so convinced that what we see is right, and because this is such a powerful illusion, it's actually one of the illusions that was most polarizing in society. That, you know, it was, so the story goes, ripping families apart. They would have these tremendous fights at the dinner table because, you know, they're like, you either must be lying or you're stupid that you are seeing this as blue and black, because it is white and gold. The illusion is just that powerful that you know, that it's one of these that has sort of taken on a legendary status in the world.
And so, is this an example of something that is a powerful party trick, or is there real science that follows along the lines of?
So here's a set of
what we've been
female
discussing?
eyes.
Suzanne,
I don't
what's your
know what
take
the species,
on this example.
feline, canine,
This
rodent, human abuse or
illusion
not,
has
but
been so
there's one
important
here and
for
one
visual
here.
science, and it was a whole
But they
new
got the
category
high
of illusion.
eyelashes. Let me
And
see if I can get
we're
it.
talking about 2015, and
Feminine.
people are freaking out on social media.
Yes,
And visual
twice, two
scientists are
different
freaking
female.
out that,
Because
you
here's
know,
another
in our,
eye. So
in
this
our
one and
correspondence
this
and at
one,
academic conferences,
and then
because
this
nobody
one
knows
and
what's
this
going
one.
on. And
So let's
what
see what I
this
got. Hold on.
highlights is that there is this range of individual differences that we didn't know about. So let me explain. So this is a color illusion. So we know about color illusions. We know how something can look one color versus another depending on contrast, contrast, etc., as we have been discussing, but mostly everybody saw the same thing in the same wrong way for the same exact image. But here we have an
Okay,
image in which
and
half of humanity is seeing it one
there
way
she
and half of
is.
humanity is seeing it the opposite way.
There
And now
she
we
is.
have more of these examples, but back then
I say
this
she
was
only because of
something
the eyes. The
completely
rest of it, I don't
revolutionary
know.
about what it revealed, how important individual differences can be in perception.
And so, what are the individual differences? Like, what have we learned? Like, why is it that half
So
of us see it
he
one way,
or
half the
she
other?
has long
Well, it's
eyelashes.
still sort of like a
But the
work
shape of
under
these,
progress.
I'm going with this
But
one right now.
what
Eye,
the consensus
nose,
seems to be,
mouth
more or
down
less
here.
right now, is that if we talk about the original
But
dress image, this was
this eye
photographed
is very
under
feminine
the
shaped,
perfect
along with this
storm
one.
of ambiguous
If I
illumination
try to find
conditions.
that one, but I
The
don't get it.
picture of the original
I don't see
dress,
her.
the lighting is a mixture of yellow and blue light. And so when you discount the illuminant, when your visual system is trying to discount the illumination conditions to arrive at the true color of the image,
Get off
different
that
people
one.
are going to be discounting either the bluish part of the lighting versus the golden parts of the lighting. There may be an evolutionary aspect as well here, because as it happens, blue and yellow have been the lighting conditions under which our visual
Yeah,
system
so
has
that pisses
evolved.
me off too.
The blue of the sky and the golden light.
Yes, so this pisses me off when this happens because I just never, it's so perfect, but yet I have no fucking explanation for it. Eye, nose, mouth down here on that particular image. Get you but then you have all the light in the water streaming off both ways, making the appearance of inanimate objects. Glasses. Even though the frame of the glasses goes down this way on one side and then shoots off that way on the other side, as if the glasses were being pulled off the head or whatever. But again, that's me seeing what I want to see. But I know I've got eye, nose, and mouth, because it's just, I can't get rid of it, right? So did humans derive it from that? I don't fucking know, but so here's a full head, eye, nose, snout, the whole snout, the mouth, different color face only of the white face here, but he's got the whole body here with the ear. And it looks like you can see a little bit of the other ear coming off the other side. You can see his shoulder, his neck and his shoulder line, and the neck on this side. Let's see if I do this. Oops. Try to get his whole body in there. Him. Or her. It looks like a her too, and really it looks like a female. So in the ape family. Anyway, that's about it. I think I'm almost out of
From
time.
the sun. So it appears to be, and this is still under investigation, and that there are some scientists, for instance, Pascal Wallace here in New York City has done really good work in this type of illusion, but it seems that those people who see the dress as black and blue, they are interpreting the dress as if it's under direct sunlight, whereas the people that see the dress as white and gold, they're interpreting, this is mostly unconscious, of course, but they're interpreting the dress to be in the shade. And why is it then that some people interpret the dress as being in the shade versus being under direct sunlight? The best answer that we have right now, that this is probably about our priors, perhaps our previous life experience with the.
This is what I was saying before in the last two videos, and I did not mention it in this video. Let's try it now without running off on something else. That they dump the mineral streets in the sky. They've been putting them up in the atmosphere for a long, long time. They know how to change our light. We're thinking of the sun as something that's 91 million miles away or whatever they're telling us. They're lying about absolutely everything we've ever been told has been a lie. And if we don't go look for ourselves, we're going to continue to lie to ourselves. Not a good idea. So to change the optics of everything around us and change the way, there's a lot of changes that happen that are bad. Doing this, going over to the white light. They went over to a white light. They've been changing all the street lights to LEDs, and the sun, they're doing the same thing with. They're giving us the same blue-white light that are, killing us from the computers and the TV monitors and shit. They're doing that with our skies, with our everyday life. They're changing things. They're taking out good light energy that we used to use to be stronger, better, healthier, and they're changing it from that yellowish light that we see it as, and pink lights and more pleasing lights to the biosystem. They're going against that and changing up the system. It's part of the takedown process, I guess, but you should go and look. You'll see it. And that's what pisses me off about no one looking at the mineral streets and everyone calling it bullshit stories and stuff. I was just saying too about Snowden. Snowden's out saying that a bunch of lies, right? A bunch of lies too, but his three main lies, he had to put them together. And it just shows who he really is. He's not working for any people. He's not, and no, I don't know why anyone ever thought he was. I mean, the information that he had was so readily available to everybody already. We just wanted to deny it. So all of a sudden somebody says that he's come out and he's got all the evidence of all the things that we already fucking knew for many years. This is fucking stupid. We do so much stupid shit. It's unbelievable.
These type of lighting conditions, but again, this is research that is being actively done right now.
So the question that brings to mind for me is, can you disambiguate how we see the dress by giving us just a little bit more in the image that will make it clear whether it's direct sunlight or perhaps, later in the day when blue sky? Will then we all agree on the color of the dress?
Yes, it has been done, and in fact, well, the actual dress, and for a while it was vision scientists. They purchased the dress and they would wear it at vision conferences. But the actual dress, if you see it under white light, everybody would agree that is black and blue. So it's really an issue of what the illumination conditions are, and there have been demonstrations at vision conferences in which scientists have brought the actual dress and vary the lighting and have it look one way versus another.
Rodrigo, are you convinced by that explanation? Is that what the cause of all the uproar was about?
For me, it's white and gold no matter what. I cannot see how people can see this in blue.
So I just want to do one final topic before we wrap up here. And Emily, it has to do with work that you've done, which has kind of like a real world impact of, expectation and bias when it comes to interpreting things in the external world. And you studied, I gather, body cam footage and had some striking insights into the way that various distinct people will interpret the same footage. Can you just take us through that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the idea here is that video footage is making its way into the courts at an exponential rate. But not only the legal courts, but the court of public opinion, as, videos documenting altercations between police and civilians or members of two different social groups, maybe a black man and a white man, are surfacing, and then going viral, and we are all acting as jurors, whether actually sitting in the courtroom doing it or sitting at home and talking with friends and family about what's happening in the world around us. An example that we found, was an altercation between a police officer and a civilian. It was a fairly routine pullover, and there's some conversation that happens first, and the civilian is resisting the requests of the police officer. The police officer goes to restrain the civilian on the hood of the police officer's cruiser. We're seeing the perspective through the dashboard camera, actually, so we can see both parties, which is important here.